Did you know that 90% of the world's millionaires invest in real estate? Well, I'm Angel with the Academy Presents Real Estate Investing Rocks, and I'm here to help you if you want to go for your piece of that pie. Roof claims are really crazy anyway, but I remember like on our personal residence, it was a big hailstorm. I mean, I guess we're in that tornado alley area. And they told me that we have like really good shingles, like some kind of 30-year or 40-year shingle. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I've never seen shingles like this, but I called them because everybody in my neighborhood's getting a new roof. And I'm like, why is everybody getting a new roof? Is this hailstorm really that bad? And so we call the insurance, they send somebody out. And they're like, no, there's nothing wrong with your roof. And I keep seeing, and I'm not just talking like one repair. Like, I want to say there was 5 or 6 houses in our neighborhood were getting new roofs. And I'm like, something really bad is going on here, and they just don't want to pay for me.
Yeah.
So I call them again, and they send somebody else out. And this next person's like, no, you don't need anything. You're fine. And you know how when a big hailstorm hits, those companies come in and they want to do everybody's roof. And so they're like, well, we'll talk to your insurance. Well, that didn't work either. And as a matter of fact, my insurance then said, if you ask us to come out again, we're going to drop you. And I was like, oh. So it would have been really nice to have someone in the intermediary there that could have been advising me.
Well, and see, it makes me want to go, whenever I hear about that, because that is an agent and as a broker, in this case, not a broker, because I know the company they're with, and they have a reputation for being terrible with roof claims, in particular, roof claims. And so, we'll leave the names out to protect the innocent, but your agent with that company should have been aware of what's going on, and they should have been acting on your behalf. And the fact that they didn't, unfortunately, is not uncommon. Most of the people that we get coming over to Risk Well are coming over either because they were referred to us and someone told this person that we're great, or they're just mad because they had a bad situation, bad service, bad claim. They feel like they're paying too much. They feel like they're not getting the advice that they need and deserve. It's always someone's coming to us because something was not right somewhere else. So
we're going to see ourselves in a situation too, where we still got a house in Lubbock that they've got massive hailstorms and tornadoes all the time.
Yeah.
And then now we're going to have more houses here, and we still have hailstorms, and like we had 80-mile-per-hour straight, what do they call that? Straight line winds like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
On our street, there were massive trees down. Like at least 3 different houses had big branches that you're just like, holy night, how did that break off?
Yeah.
Like, 20-inch diameter limbs that are falling off and being ripped off. And
wow.
It's just like holy night. And so my fear is that I'm going to not have a policy that CYAs me and my tenants when I can't fix their roof and they've got a leak for 6 months.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that, because as a real estate investor, we invest in real estate to provide good quality housing to people regardless of the asset class.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So we want to be able to do those repairs and be able to do them well. And I feel like having a good insurance policy and someone to really make sure that you're getting the best policies that you can, given your needs, it should be at the top of your list.
Yeah, no, it definitely is the same level of importance as your other key advisors. So many people think of, and this is an important thing. I'm just going to double click on this. And if you're only casually paying attention to this, watching it or listening to it, this part's really important. A good risk management advisor is that same level of necessity as a CPA, as a bookkeeper, as your financial advisor, as your business attorney, your family doctor, that level of top shelf advice, the white collar professional advisor. If you're with the right insurance group, it's going to feel like that, where it's more of an advisory kind of relationship. If all you're doing is buying a product, if you're talking about price more than coverage, if you're talking about, do you want this option or that option, and talking about the difference in cost between the two, we just really encourage you to reevaluate the way that you purchase insurance, because it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be a cost-based relationship unless you want it to be. if all you care about is cost, then yeah, go ahead and find yourself the cheapest price, but don't say I didn't warn you, because it's probably going to go sideways soon enough. I would just encourage you, watching this video, think of your insurance broker, your risk manager, as being the same level of expectation as your CPA, financial advisor, et cetera. Because if you're holding them to that standard, you're going to get a higher quality of advice, and you don't pay for that advice. So the better experience doesn't cost you any line item. You're not paying that person a consulting fee. But when you demand that they be a higher caliber of advisor, you're not just buying a product. At that point, you are selecting an advisor, which I think most people would choose if given the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking too, and I think that having been through so much of this situation with COVID, I think it's given lots of investors just a different perspective on how things work, especially if you have kids in school. There's not a cookie cutter answer to everything. And most investors, while a lot of investors are in one asset class, many investors are not. And so there's not going to be some cookie cutter fix all for every single person that's the same. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed learning about you and your company is that you're not cookie cutter. You're going to make sure that every one of your clients has everything covered in the best possible manner, given their budgetary constraints or given, their long-term goals. Maybe if they're more concerned about the money up front than on the end, because like you said, you're either going to pay for it now or you're going to pay for it later. But knowing what your clients are wanting.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, knowing that you don't want to offer something subpar.
Yeah.
And that hits home for me, because even if I'm looking at a value add, C-class property, I still want my residents to know that if you've got plumbing issues, I'm going to fix those.
Yeah.
If you've got a roof leak, I'm going to fix that. Your heater, your AC, if there's something that's going to reduce your comfort level greatly, I'm going to be on top of that.
Yeah.
Because I want you to feel good about where you live. And I feel like you're on that too. You want to know that you have your clients taken care of in the best possible way, given their parameters and given yours.
Yeah. No, and I think it's really important that people see this conversation as more than just an infomercial for Riskwell, because it definitely is from my perspective. Whether you're coming to Riskwell or you're dealing with another insurance office, the key takeaway for you listening to this right now is simply expect more from your advisor. You're not buying a product, you are securing an advisory relationship. If all you're doing is buying a product, then 1-800-INSURANCE is the right place for you, because Lord knows Geico and Progressive and these other massive call center based companies, they make billions of dollars a year on selling insurance to people that just want the cheap option. If that's you, great. Save yourself some time, go get a policy from Geico and call it a day. But if you see the value in something more, then wherever you are, I imagine most of the people watching this are probably somewhere in the geographic area that you and I operate. So if for some reason that's not you, then whatever your local best option is, give those people a call. And if not, then Riskwell operates in 24 states. So we probably are wherever you are, especially for real estate investor stuff. So where did you want to go from here? There's a lot of different directions we can take this, Angel. Is there anything else before we move on?
So yeah, so a lot of people, especially if they're doing a large multifamily, whether it's a syndication or whatever, they're going to buy a big complex.
Yeah.
Their first concern becomes, okay, what happens if somebody gets hurt on my property?
Yeah.
So again, like I said, three-way people intend to retire.
Yeah. Those three ways are definitely accurate.
Yeah. So how would you help that person, especially if they're like, well, they're just going to sue my LLC, they're going to sue my GC, they're going to sue, they're going to sue everybody they can sue, because that's when you go to a lawyer, that's what they tell you to do. You sue everybody.
Yep.
So how is that mitigated?
Well, really, before we get to that answer, it is a very clear distinction between an insurance agent and a risk manager. Because a risk manager is going to have all of these kinds of conversations that go well beyond just selling an insurance policy. our best work, our most valuable work for our clients typically is when we are engaging with the other pieces of the advisory puzzle, namely your CPA, your business attorney, and the other folks that you are, collaborating with to make sure that a deal goes the right way. The attorney obviously knows the legal side of things, but they typically don't know much about risk management and how to, utilize mitigation techniques to minimize and transfer as much risk away from you and your company as possible. So we do have some ways to do that with an insurance policy, with the limits of liability. You have premises liability that protects you from accidents and injuries and third-party property damage that might occur on the premises. But beyond that, we also leverage some realities of a contract. You have a tenant relationship with the people living in your units. You have to require them to have renter's insurance and name you and your entity as additional insured parties.
Wait, how do you make them have renter's insurance? Because I mean, when I was in college, I had an apartment. I had renter's insurance, but they didn't make me.
You simply put it in the lease agreement that you require the tenant to have renter's insurance, and you require them to name your entity as an additional insured party. What this does, there's two things. If you require them to have renter's insurance, if they break your stuff, if they disrespect your property and cause damage, then you can file a claim against their renter's insurance for damage to your property, because property damage liability on a tenant's renter's insurance policy, if they start a fire in your unit and your property is damaged because of their activity, you may be able to recover damages through their insurance program. And that is the liability coverage on a renter's policy is covering damage to an outside party that you are contractually obligated to pay. So if there is a fire in someone's kitchen, the tenant's not paying for that. The tenant's insurance policy is paying for that fire. Their insurance policy is paying to repair your property that the tenant is contractually obligated to, consider. Because if they don't have an insurance policy and they burn your unit to the ground or your entire building to the ground, who are you going to go to with your hand out saying, you need to pay me? You're going to be going after that tenant. You think that tenant has $100,000, $500,000, $2 million? You think a tenant has any money to pay you for the damage they caused your property? No, they probably don't. If you require them to have a renter's insurance policy and you require them to name you as an additional insured party, the only thing you have to do then is call the carrier to make sure that you're actually there. Because here's the beautiful thing. Once you call the carrier and verify coverage, you can sit back and relax, because now it's the carrier's responsibility to provide you written notice of cancellation with a 30-day advance notice. So once you're officially added to your tenant's renter's insurance policy, your tenant's insurance company is contractually obligated to notify you in writing if anything ever happens to that policy. So now your CYA is done, and you can have the tenant's insurance company responsible for managing that. So you don't have to, keep up with it for your tenant, because we all know tenants aren't exactly the most responsible with certain things, or else they wouldn't be living in an apartment somewhere if they were, doing everything that we do as, responsible and successful investors and people that are securing property and owning the house that you live in and such. It's not to say that that person is somehow, subpar, but there's a reason you're living in an apartment and not in a house of your own. And it's typically, financial and decision-making. There's a lot of reasons why people live in apartments, obviously. But those people tend to do silly things.
Yeah. Well, I will say, like for some people, it's a lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
But I mean,
absolutely.
there are those situations where they're in an apartment because they have no other choices. But like number one, I had never thought about requiring renter's insurance. That is like a whoa moment.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, like, that adds to the monthly cost of the rental. Not much. So when I was getting renter's insurance, I swear to you, it was like $20 a month. It wasn't much.
Yeah, it's not a lot. So and here's the thing. And perhaps I'm elitist. Perhaps I'm exercising white privilege or whatever someone may want to say. But if 15 bucks a month is a make or break for you, I don't want that person for a tenant. And if they're that close to the razor's edge, then there's probably a lot of other problems that are lurking under the surface where there's just a lot of question marks. If the $15 for renter's insurance policy or 12 or whatever it happens to be, if that's a deal breaker for that person, are they going to pay the rent on time every month? Are they going to be a problem with staying current? There's a lot of question marks that come into that. So but we do get that exact pushback. We get the investor saying, well, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do that. Well, then the answer is simply, if you don't feel comfortable having your tenant do that, then just buy a master tenant policy that applies to every unit, and you can take care of the cost yourself and name the tenant as the insured party so that you accomplish the same task. So especially for these multifamily things, that's what a lot of these companies do, is they'll just roll it into a larger number of units and just make it a package. You pay it with your rent. Because if you're buying it for a larger deal, I mean, you can get 50 units worth of tenant coverage, liability and property damage for a whole lot less than you can buy 50 individual renters policies. There's a lot of different ways we can play that game.
I wonder if it's considered a conflict of interest if you go to the tenant and say, hey, I worked out a deal with this company that can get you reduced renter's insurance every month if you'll just go with this company.
No, and it's not a conflict of interest because you're not asking them to go with this company. You would simply put it in there in the lease agreement that this is being provided for you, this is the cost, and it's just part of the agreement. It's no different than if you happen to have, say, trash pickup at your complex and you are rolling in a fee allocation for 1/20th. Let's say you got a 20 unit property and you're paying a trash company a certain amount to pick up trash at your complex. You would simply be passing that cost on to the tenant in the form of whatever you want to call it, but it's on the lease, and it's just hey, this is one of the things we do for you. This is a cost that's rolled into your lease. So, again, it's a strategic thing. And if you don't want to have that problem where you're concerned about your tenant paying for something, then take care of it yourself. Because at the end of the day, it's the same cost for you, and a little bit less actually if you're doing a master tenant policy. So if you have a 12 unit property, you're just going to buy a master tenant policy for that property that applies to all 12 units. And then you as the property owner would receive the benefits of the coverage if something were to happen.
So say you have that master tenant policy and there is a fire from a candle or whatever in one of the units. So then does one of your policies goes to the master tenant policy and they work with one another to cover things, or is it just like one big policy?
It would be probably two different policies, where the master tenant policy would be primary for certain causes of loss, and your property policy, your main policy for the real estate property, would be secondary for certain causes of loss. So
that's really kind of like if you get in a car wreck and your insurance pays, and then they go after the other guy to get that other piece.
That's precisely what it is. It's called subrogation, and that process plays out every single day, where then insurance companies end up pointing finger at each other, and you let their attorneys figure it out. It's not your problem.
Yeah. Yeah, we were in a car wreck in January, and what month is this? August? It's still not resolved.
Yeah.
Because of that problem.
Yeah. Subrogation is nasty, but at least you're not involved in it. At least you're not wasting your time fighting with an adjuster to get something paid.
I only call when we get a collection bill and I'm like, what the heck? This isn't my bill. And I call them I've got XYZ claim number.
Yep.
And this is what's going on. And they notate it and I don't hear from them again. But it kind of ticks me off because I'm like, I should have never heard about it to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess that's the benefit to having a good risk advisor.
Yeah.
That can help you so that you don't wind up in some of those situations. So
dealing with it on the front end is so much easier. being proactive about putting the solutions in place is, gosh, it's so much less hassle than trying to figure it out after the fact. It costs you so much more time and energy. And I don't know, if you're anything like me, you've already figured out how much your time is worth, and it drives you crazy when people waste your time. So that's a
Yeah,
nice little exercise. If you haven't done it, you should try it sometime. Figure out what your total income was last year, figure out the average number of hours that you worked in a week, divide it out, and figure out what your value per hour is. And then you start getting into the whole, the 4 steps of, is this important? Is this something that needs to happen at all? Well, if it's not, then terminate that sucker. Is it something that is highly repeatable, that happens the same way every time? Should I be doing it myself? Probably not. You should automate that thing. Well, there's the second filter: terminate and then automate. Is this something I should be doing, or is this something someone on my team should be doing? All right, well, then delegate. We got terminate, automate, and then delegate. And only after it passes those 3 filters, all right, now it's something I should be doing. Is it something that needs to happen at all? Is it something I can automate? Is it something I can get someone else on my team to do where their hourly value is not as high as mine is? If all 3 of those are yeses, all right, now I'll do it myself. Until that point, no.